I'm a big fan of tabletop TTRPGs, and in most of the groups I am in, I am the game master. I am running the game. And I just wanted to talk a bit about something that I'm pretty passionate about when it comes to tabletop RPGs and gaming. It is a thing that I like to call taking the game out of the game. Now, most tabletop RPGs, you play the game in two parts. I'm going to use Dungeons and Dragons as the example here, though obviously there are many other games, and D&D is not even the primary game I played, but probably the most familiar to most of us. D&D is played primarily on two levels. The game itself. Now, this is role-playing, this is taking actions, this is using abilities, this is casting a spell, swinging your sword, that is all of that. That is the game itself. That is primarily happening in your head or maybe on a piece of paper in front of you, but usually it's mostly theater of the mind, and it's talking and describing what we're doing. And D&D has a second part to its gameplay, however, and that is the real world. Now, I'm not talking necessarily about being at a table surrounded by your friends. I'm talking about what is actually the gameplay mechanics and the game itself from a design perspective. Now, that would be rolling dice and updating stuff on your character sheet. That's really the only part of D&D that happens outside of the game itself. Now, my entire mindset is that let's take the game and let's bring it into the real world. Let's take the game out of the game. Now, there are two primary ways that I like to do this at my table. The first is what I like to call representative action, which is a term and an idea I have stolen from the LARP space, actually. And it's that you don't need one-to-one of everything. And a lot of stuff you can still just resolve with the dice. But let's say your players are solving a puzzle where they have to translate a code that was written by someone. You don't need to write a complex code that is as crazy as the one it is. Just find an online tool that lets you make a cryptogram or a word puzzle. Print them out and have your players solve them in real life. Maybe give them a dice roll, and if depending on how good they do on the dice roll, you give them more clues or more help. If they do badly, they get less. Now, this cryptogram or word puzzle is not going to be as crazy and complicated or as in-world as like if you went and did a ton of research on like Dwarvish language and wrote out a big thing using all of that. But it's still going to be something that the players will interact with and think about on a deeper level, and is going to be a lot more engaging and fun than just rolling the dice and describing what happens. Another good example of what I like to do with this is in my settings and my game is pretty common for there to be various monsters that will like banish a player to the Shadow Realm or into a mystical maze or something like that. And rather than having to run a whole separate scene for them while they escape, I just have them go and find a d20. Now, before the game starts, I hide a number of d20-sided dice in another room of the house, and then when I tell a player to go find one, they have to rush off and find one and then bring it back to me. And depending on how long they take, that's how I calculate the consequences, whether that's damage or a scene or whatever it is. The longer they take, the greater the consequences are. And that gives the players a chance to get up away from the table and move around while still having pressure. It puts pressure and brings the excitement of what's happening in the game more into the real world, gets their heart pumping, gets them a consequence and moment where they have to think and do something. Now, the second way I like to do this, beyond just representative action, is what I like to call attention encouragement. Now, this is not a diss to any players or any person who plays TTRPGs, but it's really easy to get distracted at the table. Just looking at your phone or chatting with a friend about something different, or like I don't have a problem with table chatter, but still like keeping focus and keeping engaged, like even when it's not your turn. And the way I like to do this is a tool that I use called perception cards. I got this idea from a good friend of mine who used it on her tabletop games, and I've used it ever since. Now, these perception cards is just a little card you put on top of your GM screen so the players can see that it got placed there. And what it means is that there is a perception check that can be made in this area. There's something to notice. What it does is it frees you from that eternal hell of having to go, does anyone want to make a perception check? Without also making it so that the players feel like they're something being hidden from them by you. It's not a versus, you're not disguising the truth. If they have to be paying attention to notice it. So it kind of translates the real thing of looking around and paying attention into the real world. I use this for perception checks, I have ones for nature checks, and I have one for arcana checks, because I think those are three of like the passive things you might notice depending on what your character is good at. The other thing I like to do is I tend to theme my music I'm playing to whatever's going on. And I don't play loud music, but like whatever the background is. If it suddenly becomes darker, moodier, and a little bit more threatening, that means that something's coming. Something bad is going to happen. If it becomes a little more lighthearted, maybe you're in the free and the clear now, and you can let up a little bit. And obviously, I like to use a combination of them. It depends on the moment, depends on the scene, depends on the time. But using these basic ideas and the concept of taking the game out of the game has brought me so much more engagement and excitement from my players and my tables. It just has it's made playing the game a much more interesting experience. Now, I hope you guys can take away something interesting from that, and see you all next time. Goodbye.